Hey guys, David here from Crypto Consciousness. Thanks for tuning back in. I've had a few people ask me about Bitcoin if we could do an update, and so here it is. Let's do it. We've got Bitcoin in Coinspot, which is the Australian dollar version. We want to have a look at basically what's trending, which way is it going, what's happened to Bitcoin lately. Well, we've definitely seen a slowdown. We've had a pullback and then some consolidation, and this is in the 1 hourly chart. After what we thought was a cup and handle, we thought perhaps now it's time to continue its way up, but we've had a bit of a breather here, and now we're forming an ascending triangle. So what that means is, on a technical level, we potentially can break in two directions, which is an up and a down, but we're intensifying towards the peak of it, which you can see here where the 2 points meet. That's the time frame we're looking at. So if we go down to the bottom, we can see on the 25th of this month, which is in 3 days, up to the 26th. By then, we should see a breakout either direction. And when it does come, you basically can prepare yourself for a little bit more of an explosive move once it comes out of that intensity spot. If we come past this top line, obviously we're going to be heading up. If we pass the bottom line, we'll be heading down. Now, I've taken that measurement from in here, which is what you do on an ascending triangle. The most important thing is that you can spot it and you can see the volume is decreasing. So we have here volume decreasing. So as volume decreases, things slow down, but it also means that the move could be a lot more explosive coming out of it. But we will see what will happen there. Overall, let's just have a look. If Bitcoin, if this is a 1 hour chart, if we go into our daily chart, take a bit more of the noise out, we can see that since January we've had massive amounts of volume of selling and buying and selling of Bitcoin, but you can see overall our trend is up, and that's really what we want to focus on, is the main trend. So rather than looking at it day to day and worrying about the $1,000 difference or $4,000 difference, we want to be looking at the increase incrementally. And you can have a look here on the moving averages. We've got the 20-day, 50-day, and 200-day. So that's like our last point of defense before we confirm bearish market. Then we've got our 50, which is really the second place. We don't want to see it go past that. That's really where we want to be playing up to. So up while Bitcoin's price is above the 20-day moving average and the 50-day moving average, we can still call this a beautiful bull market. So even if it does come down, and let's say we do touch the 50-day moving average and also this area here where there is some potential for it to hit. So we've got a lot of confluence of points to touch here. And so you could be looking at, if it does drop down, we could be looking at $66,000 as a point to take profit if you would want to short it on Bybit. The details below if you want a referral code to get I think it's up to $200 at the moment. It does change, but the referral code will give you some Bitcoin and some bonus credit on that account, so you can trade Bitcoin whether you're shorting it or longing the position. That's up to you, but please know what you're doing before you enter that type of trading. It's not for the new beginners. It's really for those who know about day trading, being able to open and close any directional order. Now back to Coinspot, we've got this as our sell spot. So if the market does pull down over the next day, probably looking at an entry point of 73.7, and then putting a take profit here at 66,000. A stop loss just above here, which would be 77,000. If you're going to go long and put a conditional order or a limit order if triggered, let's say once it comes out about 78,000, and then you could put a take profit at 87 to 88,000. There you go, dollars. So that could be where you take profit with, again, a stop loss on the opposite side of there where we would enter for a short. If you entered it long, you would put a stop loss where the short is. If you're entering it short, you could put a stop loss where the long is. But again, it comes down to how much you're prepared to risk. So your risk or reward ratio is something you need to decide on. But at the moment, we do know that either way, when it comes out, you'll most likely find a lot of traders are ready to take that order, and so the volume and will kick in, and so mostly the pricing will all happen and the order books will just fly for a little bit. So that's generally when you pass those resistant lines, you'll find that there's a lot of orders at that point there, and so it gets filled pretty quickly. So that's where the quick increase occurs. Just having a look here on the daily also, we have our first point of support, which would be about here at 69.7, 69.8. So if you were to take profit in the first point as well, as far as if you're a bit more optimistic, if it did break down, you could take profit at 66. Because we don't have any price action for above, we're going to go with that market there. It's 87 to 88,000. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight. We are on an uptrend, so there's really nothing to worry about. We could do with more of a correction, especially the 66 and 65. There's a good point there that if it did come back down, it would be good. But we have so much institutional buying going on, so much behind the door absorbing of the Bitcoin tokens, that you are finding that these kind of opportunities, these corrections and these drops, they don't last that long, and they don't seem to be that big lately, particularly for the last 6 months. I think the best we had was about a 38% correction. If we could just get the measuring tool to work. Not working right now. Must be on holidays. Okay, so it's not working. Anyway, so we've had like a 38% drop. I think it was this one back here. Where are we? February, yeah, January. So that was 38% pullback there. And then recently we had a roughly equal 25% to 30% pullback. So, and also the gap between it from the top to the top is roughly 7 weeks. And from this top to that top's a lot less than that. So it's half of that, maybe 3 weeks. So if we find that it's getting shorter to the next top, so if we peak pretty quickly and the time for the tops is getting shorter, it's possibly also an indicator that the market is ready to start to reverse a little bit and put more of a serious correction into play. But again, we do have our 50-day moving average is usually our good support. If we could just pull this down for a second. We'll pull that up there. Let's go onto the weekly. Go into a weekly chart. Here we go. So must be my internet that's working a bit slow. All right. So if you have a look, now the measuring tool's working. A little bit slow, buddy. All right. So here we go. So since last year, since March, all we've seen is a nice uptrend on a weekly chart. So it's a pretty parabolic move, but we do know Bitcoin can be quite parabolic. This could go up to 100K and then decide to pull a correction. It could even go past that. That there's really uncharted territory here for Bitcoin, but we do know the stock to flow ratio as well says around 100,000. So it would be realistic to go there over the next 2 months. And when that happens, obviously, potentially we need to be prepared to close some of our positions to take profit, because a correction can happen pretty quickly, especially if institutes are way in profit right now. So a lot of them were buying back here on this dip on 38,000. So even if it comes back to 50 or 60,000, where we are now, 65,000, they'd still all be quite happy and in profits. So a sell-off wouldn't be uncommon. So prepare yourself for both directions. Have a stop loss in. So if we go back to our daily chart, have a stop loss in. If you own a Bitcoin or many Bitcoins, or even part of a Bitcoin, and you aren't prepared to lose much of that capital, you want to preserve it. So one of the big things that I like to focus on is preserving your capital. So you might really want to play it safe and say, okay, well, if I have a 0.1 of a Bitcoin at $7,500, I don't want to be losing. Let's say you want to walk away with at least $5,000, so you would want to put your stop loss around the $60,000 or $58,000 mark, and know that no matter what, but if the market retraces and it triggers that price, you would at least have your $5,000. The rest is your buffer of risk. If it comes down and then potentially continues down, obviously you've done a good thing. Worst case scenario though is when it just tips you out. And we all love that one, don't we? It just tips you out at your point of 60,000 stop loss and then continues to the moon. Yeah, it happens to all of us. It's part of trading. It's just getting used to it and trying not to be caught up too much on the day to day, but do be smart about how you protect your money, having a stop loss, also putting in a sell order. So have a target, because while you sleep at night, this target might be tapped and might hit. And if so, at that point, many others might have the same target. There's a sell-off, so it may take a long time to come back to that price. So not to miss that capital by putting in that order. So in this case, if you think it's going to go to 120 Australian $1,000, what you do is you go to your orders, you go to sell, and you select to order at if price hits such and such price, sell this much Bitcoin, and so you'll put in your total. The one thing though, when you're doing that amount, let's say you had 1 Bitcoin and you wanted to lock up 1 Bitcoin in that sale, you wanted to sell all of it to keep it simple, you would have to keep that order in place. Needs to have that Bitcoin available. So it means you can't have other orders, can't have other stop losses. It's only for that order. So if there's one buy order, that's what that Bitcoin will be locked up for. So just look into those details. Have some practice at the more advanced ways to put your orders in Coinspot. Brilliant exchange, great exchange. If you aren't on it, get on it. There's referral codes for that down the bottom. And if you want to get people into crypto here in Australia, this to me is the best exchange. There are others, but to me this is the simplest, the most reliable, and the fees don't change and the margins and the spreads don't change like they do in other exchanges. I like how they just keep it 1% brokerage fee, and then the spread is slight, very small. But Bitcoin's most liquid, so you'll generally find that the liquid's super high, and therefore they have the smallest margins, and you get the best price for it. That's my experience. So anyway, hope that all helps. Happy trading, happy investing, and make sure you hit like on the YouTube, not on the Facebook. Hit the like on the YouTube and subscribe to the channel so you stay updated with any updates that I make. Awesome. Have a good one, guys. See you in the next video.